Chapter 2. Jack opened the door for me, and the cold wind rushed in, biting at my fingers and nose. I shivered and tightened my cloak around me, missing the warmth of Kodiak's fur. My faithful dog had always been by my side, and leaving him behind felt like leaving part of my soul. Since Mother's passing 5 years ago, Kodiak had been my closest companion, offering me comfort and love when the world seemed too harsh. Without him, a strange emptiness settled over me, as if the world had grown colder. Outside, the snow crunched underfoot as I hesitated. My clothing felt stiff where Kodiak's blood had dried, though it blended into the red fabric of my cloak. The memory of his injury still haunted me, and my heart ached with worry. Beryl's shop had been our only hope, and now that Kodiak was stable, I could focus on the next part of my journey. But the problem was, I wasn't sure if I could trust Jack. Jack, meanwhile, busied himself untying his dogs from where they were staked. His gloved hands worked quickly, detangling the harnesses and preparing the sled. He glanced at me, his sharp gaze flicking to my hairline as if searching for something. "So," he began, "how do you know so much about mage laws? You're not a mage yourself." His question caught me off guard, and I fumbled for a response. "My father was one of the 10 lords," I explained, my voice steady despite the nervous flutter in my chest. "He had a strong interest in mage rights. He believed that denying mages their rights hurt society as a whole." Jack paused, the gang line in his hands, and looked at me with surprise. "Wait, you don't mean Lord Cedric Frost, do you?" His words startled me, and I nearly stumbled in the snow. "Yes." "Did you know him?" A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Very well. We worked together on several laws. Did he never mention me?" My jaw dropped in astonishment. "You're that Jack? I had no idea. Father spoke about working with an advisor named Jack, but I thought it was someone much older." Excitement bubbled within me, chasing away the cold. The stories my father had told me about drafting laws suddenly took on a new meaning. "I can't believe it. You must have worked with him for years, but you're not much older than I am. How did you gain so much experience?" Jack's frosty demeanor thawed under my enthusiasm. He leaned closer, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "Let's just say I've been a mage all my life," he said, running a hand through his shock of white hair. His words made me laugh, a warmth spreading through my chest. It felt surreal to meet someone who had been such a pivotal part of my father's work. Growing up, I had admired my father's dedication to mage rights, and now meeting Jack felt like stepping into one of those stories he had told me by the fireplace. "You know," Jack continued, "your father talked about you often. He was proud of your accomplishments." His words brought a lump to my throat. "He talked about me? That's kind of you to say, but my accomplishments pale in comparison to yours. You're a royal advisor, a mage, and clearly an expert dog handler." Jack grinned, shaking his head. "And you're the woman who founded a school for young mages, won ice skating awards at 10, and trained dogs by the time you were 12. I think we both have our strengths." His praise made me blush, but it also filled me with pride. For the first time in years, I felt a connection to my father's legacy, as though Jack's presence brought a piece of him back to life. "Get in," Jack said, gesturing to the sled. "I'll take you the rest of the way." Without hesitation, I climbed into the sled, the peppermint scent of Jack's coat lingering in the air. Despite the late hour and the pitch-black sky, my excitement kept exhaustion at bay. As the dogs took off, the sled glided smoothly over the snow, the sound of jingling bells filling the air. The castle wasn't far now, and I felt a renewed sense of purpose. "Tell me," I asked eagerly, "how did you become the prince's advisor at such a young age? My father always spoke of you as though you were indispensable." Jack chuckled, a hint of embarrassment in his tone. "It's not as impressive as it sounds. My mother was the queen's handmaiden, and I grew up around the royal family. The king and queen were already working on changing laws for mages, and having a mage on staff made sense. Your father was the real genius behind those laws. But they valued your opinion, I insisted. My father told me they consulted you on every decision. Jack shrugged modestly. I gave them an insider's perspective. That's all. As the sled sped through the snow, I felt a deep sense of admiration for Jack. He had not only worked alongside my father, but had also carried forward the ideals we both held dear. For the first time since my father's death, I felt as though I wasn't alone in my fight to preserve his legacy. By the time we reached the castle, the sky had begun to lighten, a soft blue hue replacing the inky black of night. Jack brought the sled to a halt, his voice calm as he commanded the dogs. Easy, easy. Whoa. As he patted each dog, murmuring words of praise, I bent down to help remove their booties. The dogs wagged their tails, their tongues lolling out in exhaustion but contentment. What are their names? I asked, unable to resist stroking their fur. Jack listed them off, pointing to each one. Ace, Yeti, Shuki, Belinda, Nanook, Cinder, Sierra, and Rocky. Each name carried a sense of familiarity and care, as though these dogs were more than just a team. They were family. You said you needed to come to the castle, Jack said, his tone curious. But it wasn't for the bride competition. Why are you here? His question brought me back to reality. Before my father passed away, I began. He told me he would leave his estate to me so I could keep the school open. But after his death, his will and all the documents disappeared. I believe my stepmother had something to do with it. Jack frowned, his expression serious. Do you have any proof? I shook my head. No, but it's suspicious. The documents vanished the same day he died, and my stepmother revoked the school's funding shortly after. I don't think she had anything to do with his passing. Father had been ill for a long time, but I believe she took the will to secure the estate for herself and her daughters. Jack listened intently, his eyes narrowing in thought. It does sound suspicious. What did she say when you confronted her? She denied everything, I replied bitterly. She even cried, accusing me of badgering a grieving widow. Jack sighed. That's a clever way to deflect suspicion, but why would she leave you on the road last night? She wants her daughters to compete in the bride competition, I explained. If the estate passes to me, they'll lose their titles and can't participate. This was her way of ensuring they stay eligible. Jack nodded, his expression thoughtful. You've been through a lot, but you're not alone in this. We'll figure it out. His words filled me with hope. For the first time in years, I felt as though I had an ally, someone who understood my struggles and shared my determination to make things right. As the castle loomed closer, I resolved to fight for my father's legacy, no matter the cost. No! I heard the archives store wills and other legal documents, and I planned to search them. That's why I was so eager to come with my stepfamily when they said they'd be visiting. Sometimes they do keep records, Jack said with a small shrug. We had finished unharnessing the dogs and taking off their paw covers. While I stored the booties in the compartment Jack showed me, he neatly coiled the gang and tug lines, hanging them on the wall. But only if the documents were submitted with proper credentials. Honestly, it's a legal mess to get anything done quickly. Yes, I know. My father and I had to go through endless paperwork just to get our school's license approved. It felt like jumping through flaming hoops. Now, if I don't get it renewed in 6 days, it will expire, and the school will close, maybe permanently. If that happens, I'll have to redo all the paperwork. Worse, I need a lord's approval. If I'm named a lord in my father's will, I can approve it myself, but I need to find the records first. I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache already forming. About the records room, Jack began hesitantly. It's off limits except for the senior staff. I can't even promise Cedric's will is here. Plus, with all the balls happening, the staff are busy. If you want someone to help, You'll need to wait until the events are over. How long will that take? I asked. A week. There are several balls, a feast, and... Jack hesitated. If you're not participating, you won't be allowed to stay. The head steward is strict about that rule. He says there's already too much going on. I bit my lip, watching 3 hens perched on the rafters, far from the dog's reach. My stepmother could easily forge a new will in that time, and the deadline to renew the license would pass. I couldn't wait that long. My students were missing their education already. If only I had more time to search or find someone willing to fund the school. Can I join the event? Then drop out later? Jack raised his hand to his chest in mock shock. A lady who doesn't want to marry the prince tells his advisor that, and I'm the one who eliminates contestants? I smiled mischievously. Eliminating young ladies? How will mages ever earn a good reputation if you go around removing anyone you dislike? Jack rolled his eyes. You know what I meant. Do I? I only just met you. For all I know, you could be one of those untrustworthy men women are warned about. Jack laughed. I've been called worse. To answer your question, yes. You can join and leave later. You just need to prove you're a noble and sign some papers saying you understand that competing doesn't guarantee marriage to the prince. I smirked. And contestants be any age? I know plenty of noble 80-year-old women who are eligible. I'm seeing flaws in the system already. No 80-year-olds as far as I know. And the prince chooses, so I doubt he'd go for someone 4 times his age. And what kind of tests are in this competition? Jack raised an eyebrow. Oh, now you want insider information to get ahead? You'll need more than just looks to get me to spill anything. I didn't realize you'd noticed my looks, I teased. Jack's pale face flushed bright red, making his electric blue eyes stand out even more. Not that I wasn't saying if you think... It's fine, I interrupted with a grin. I noticed your looks too. Now see here, Jack stammered, backing into his pack of dogs, who circled around him. You can't just go saying things like that. I don't usually listen when people tell me not to do things. A little harmless flirting doesn't hurt. It does when you're flirting with a mage, he said quietly, and it's not you who would get in trouble for it. My heart sank. I'd forgotten about the laws banning relationships between mages and non-mages. Jack could lose his position, or worse, if anyone thought he was flirting back. I'm sorry, I said quickly. I didn't think before I spoke. Jack's jaw tightened as he wiped down his sled. I stood awkwardly, regretting my reckless words. Jack had no freedom to be with anyone outside his small circle. Mages were rare, and finding one his age was nearly impossible. My school only had a dozen mage students, aged 5 to 18. After a while, Jack finally relaxed. Judging by your actions today, I think not thinking before speaking might be normal for you. Only judging by today? My father never told you I was impulsive. It's like he didn't know me at all, Jack chuckled. Cedric might have mentioned it once or twice. He tied up the sled and turned to me. You should enter. I'll help you with your father's will. And if you marry Prince Stephen, you won't need an inheritance. You could open 100 schools. Will you have time to help me? You must be busy with your advisor duties. I'll find time, Jack said softly. I knew your father, after all. You're doing so much for me. What can I do for you? Jack's face grew serious. If you convince the king to grant mages full rights, that would mean everything to me. I'd do that anyway. Maybe I can teach you ice skating or help with your dogs. Jack smiled. I'll take the skating lesson, but only if you promise not to laugh at me. I promise! Then let's get you signed up for the event, Jack said. I thought you said it wasn't a competition, I teased. Forget I called it that. Officially, it's a week of balls. But, he grinned slyly, only one girl makes it to the end. You decide if it's a competition.